Some days, everything just works. Your thoughts feel clear. Your body moves easily. Your mind is steady. Even effort feels light. And then there are days when something is off. Your mind feels foggy. Your joints feel tight. Your mood is fragile. Small tasks carry a strange weight to them, as if gravity itself has increased. We usually explain this away with stress or poor sleep or just getting older. But what if that sensation, that deep, quiet sense that something inside you is off, is actually the sound of your cells running low on energy? Not metaphorical energy, not motivation, but ATP, the literal fuel your cells need to stay alive. Because here's the surprising truth. Most chronic inflammation begins not with infection or injury, but with cells that can no longer make enough energy to do their jobs. And when a cell becomes underpowered, it behaves like a cell in danger. It sounds chemical alarm signals. It calls in the immune system. And in trying to help, your immune cells create their own collateral damage, a quiet war unfolding inside your body as it's trying to protect itself from itself. This is why in the book, Good Energy by Dr. Casey Means, she says there is one measure that can reframe how we understand health and disease, how well or how poorly your mitochondria are making energy. In today's video, we're going to unpack what happens inside your body when these tiny organelles fall behind on their job, and why this breakdown is one of the most overlooked root causes of the symptoms so many people live with. Because when your mitochondria struggle, your cells struggle. And when your cells struggle, you feel it everywhere. Before we dive in deeper, I want to give you a clear roadmap for where we're headed today and why this video on good energy is so foundational. Dr. Casey Means makes a simple but profound claim. If you want to understand your health, start by understanding how well your mitochondria are making energy. That single measure reshapes the way we think about inflammation, symptoms, and chronic diseases. So in this video, we're going to explore 4 ideas, each one building on the last. First, we'll break down what mitochondria actually do. Not in a textbook way, but in a practical sense. How these tiny organelles convert the food you eat into ATP, the molecule that powers your life. Second, we'll look at what happens when your cells run out of that energy, how underpowered cells send alarm signals and activate the immune system and create a kind of internal friction that many of us feel as chronic inflammation. Third, we'll connect the dots between low cellular energy and the widespread symptoms so many people experience today. Symptoms that often look unrelated but share the same upstream cause. And fourth, we'll walk through the 7 major jobs every cell in your body must perform and why each one depends entirely on a steady supply of ATP. My goal in this video is not to overwhelm you with biochemistry. It's to give you a mental model that makes your health feel coherent. Because when you understand how your cells make energy, everything else, your mood, your focus, your cravings, your inflammation, your resilience, start to make more sense. So let's start at the beginning. What exactly are mitochondria doing? And why do they matter so much? To understand what happens when your cells run out of energy, we first need to understand where that energy comes from. And that brings us to one of the most important structures in the human body. Structures so small, you could fit millions of them on the head of a pin, your mitochondria. Mitochondria are often described as the powerhouses of the cell, but that phrase barely captures what they actually do. A better word is transformers. You see, every time you eat, your food gets broken down into smaller and smaller pieces. Glucose, fatty acids, amino acids. But none of these are forms of energy your cells can actually use. So mitochondria step in. They take those breakdown products and feed their electrons into a beautifully complex assembly line called the electron transport chain. It's here that mitochondria perform their central task. They convert the energy in food into a usable currency called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. See, you could think of it like if glucose is a paycheck, ATP is cash in hand. It's immediate. It's spendable. It pays for everything. Your thoughts, your heartbeat, your hormones, your temperature, your immune response, your digestion, your movement, your sleep, your stress, recovery. ATP pays all of it. Dr. Means puts it simply, ATP is the most important molecule in the human body. Without ATP, nothing inside you works. And here's something that most people don't realize. Not all cells have the same energy needs. Some, like skin cells, can get by with just a few mitochondria. Others, like those in your brain and your heart, in your ovaries, your eyes, your liver, your muscles, need hundreds of thousands. Why? Because these organs are doing incredibly demanding work. Thinking, pumping, filtering, producing hormones, seeing, detoxifying, moving, and heavy work requires heavy energy. So the more essential the organ, the more mitochondria it contains, and the more vulnerable it is when mitochondria fall behind. This is why mitochondrial function isn't an obscure scientific detail. It is the quiet engine behind your lived experience, which leads us to the next question. What happens when that engine starts to sputter? What happens when your mitochondria can't make enough ATP to meet the demands of your life? This is where things get interesting, because the answer reveals one of the most important and most misunderstood ideas in modern health. An underpowered cell is a threatened cell, and not metaphorically, but biologically threatened. A cell that's struggling to make enough ATP can't perform its basic functions. It can't repair DNA efficiently. It can't maintain its structure. It can't communicate with neighbors. It can't clean up waste. It can't keep the internal environment stable. And when a cell can't do its job, it behaves exactly the way a cell behaves when it's injured or infected. It sends out chemical distress signals. These signals are designed to recruit the immune system, because from the body's perspective, a struggling cell is a vulnerable cell. The immune system rushes in to help, believing there's a threat that needs to be neutralized. But here's where things get complicated. If the original problem is energy shortage, not infection, not trauma, not toxins, the immune response doesn't actually solve anything. It just adds more stress, more inflammation, more collateral damage, more metabolic strain on the cells that were already struggling. Dr. Means describes this as a literal war within the body. Not because the body is attacking itself, but because the immune system is responding to a problem it cannot fix. Think of it like this. Imagine a fire alarm going off in a building. Not because there's a fire, but because the power is failing. The sprinklers turn on. The emergency lights flash. The fire department breaks down the door. They mean well, but the response creates more chaos than the original issue. This is what chronic inflammation is. It's the immune system responding to underpowered cells, mistaking energy failure for injury or danger. And the longer this continues, the worse the symptoms become. Fatigue, aches, brain fog, anxiety, digestive issues, skin problems, hormonal swings, low resilience, widespread inflammation. Symptoms that can feel scattered, mysterious, or unrelated, but actually stem from the same upstream source. Cells that don't have enough energy to do their work. This is why Dr. Means says the single most powerful way to reframe health is to ask, how well are my mitochondria making energy? Because when energy production falters, the immune system compensates. And that compensation is what so many people experience as chronic inflammation. We often talk about inflammation as if it's its own disease, an isolated problem floating somewhere in the background. But inflammation is not a standalone condition. It's a response, a defense posture the body takes when something inside it looks threatened. And one of the biggest reasons a cell looks threatened is simple. It doesn't have enough energy to do its job. Let's walk through the logic. When mitochondria can't make enough ATP, the cell can't keep up with its workload. It falls behind on repairs, it loses stability, it struggles to communicate, and then waste builds up. Stress chemicals rise. And to the immune system, that cell looks injured. So the body deploys immune cells. Not because there's an infection, but because the cell is signaling, I can't maintain myself. Something is wrong. But here's the key insight. Chronic inflammation is often what happens when this energy shortage never gets resolved. The immune system keeps responding to cells in distress. The cells keep sounding the alarm, and the cycle continues, creating low-grade inflammation that can touch every part of your life. Your brain, your joints, your digestion, your mood, your hormones, your skin, your sleep, your resilience. This is why so many symptoms that seem unrelated, aches, fatigue, irritability, fogginess, gut issues, reactions to food, headaches, fluctuating energy levels, often share the same upstream cause. Underpowered cells triggering an immune system that's trying to protect you. These aren't separate problems, they're connected expressions of the same foundational issue, low cellular energy. This is why Dr. Means writes that metabolic dysfunction and inflammation go in lockstep. They rise together because they are two sides of the same biological story. Inflammation is not the enemy, it's a signal. It's your body saying, I don't have the energy to keep things running smoothly. And that brings us to one of the most important ideas in this entire book. Every major function inside a cell depends entirely on ATP, which means the next question follows naturally. What exactly are cells trying to do with all that energy? And what falls apart when ATP runs low? To answer that, we need to look at the various jobs every cell must perform to keep you alive. Dr. Casey Means explains that while cells perform thousands of microscopic tasks every second, their work can be grouped into 7 essential categories. And every one of them depend entirely on ATP. 1, making protein. Proteins are the machinery of life. Your enzymes, your hormones, your neurotransmitters, your muscle fibers, your immune molecules. They're all proteins. Building them requires enormous amounts of ATP. So when energy drops, protein production slows and everything downstream loses momentum. 2, repairing, regulating, and replicating DNA. Inside every cell, your DNA is constantly being repaired. You see, because sunlight, chemicals, stress, and just normal wear and tear all create tiny forms of damage. Fixing that damage is high energy work. If ATP is low, repairs get postponed, errors accumulate, and cellular aging actually accelerates. 3, cell signaling. Cells don't work in isolation. They talk constantly through electrical signals, chemical messengers, and molecular switches. But communication requires, you guessed it, energy. Low ATP means slow signals, mixed messages, and miscommunication between systems that need to be coordinated. This can show up as hormonal imbalances, mood shifts, appetite changes, and disrupted circadian rhythms. 4, transportation. Every cell functions like a miniature city. Nutrients must move in, waste must move out, ions must be shifted across membranes to keep electrical balance. This movement is powered almost entirely by ATP. When energy is low, transportation slows, cells get congested, toxic byproducts accumulate, stress rises internally. 5, homeostasis. See, homeostasis is balance. Your cell's ability to maintain a stable environment regardless of what's happening outside. Temperature, pH, hydration, ion gradients. All of these depend on a steady flow of energy. Without ATP, that stability collapses and the cells become vulnerable to stress and damage. 6, waste cleanup and autophagy. Cells generate waste like we do. See, some of it is harmless, but some of it becomes toxic if it's not cleared quickly enough. Autophagy, your cell's internal recycling system, requires ATP to break down and remove damaged parts. When energy is low, cleanup stalls, debris builds up, and inflammation rises, right? And 7, metabolism. Metabolism isn't just burning calories. It's the entire set of processes that keep your body alive, fueling organs, regulating temperature, managing blood sugar, and responding to stress. All of it is powered by, right, ATP. So when ATP falters, metabolism falters too. When you see these 7 jobs lined up, the picture becomes clear. Every essential function inside a cell is paid for by ATP. So when mitochondria struggle to make energy, the cell simply can't keep up. And when a cell can't keep up, your body sends signals, not to annoy you, but to alert you. Fatigue, brain fog, anxiety, aches, cravings, bloating, mood shifts, skin flare-ups, inflammation. These aren't random symptoms. They're the body's way of saying, I don't have the energy to meet my needs. So why does any of this matter? Because underneath the complexity of health, beneath the diagnoses and the symptoms and the wellness trends, there's something simple and profoundly human. You want to feel like yourself. You want clarity. You want steadiness. You want energy that lasts beyond your morning coffee. You want a body that responds, not resists. You want a mind that feels open, patient, and creative. And so many people don't feel that way right now. Not because they're failing, not because they're undisciplined, not because they haven't found the right supplement or superfood or life hack, but because their cells are running low on energy. And when your cells run low, you feel it everywhere. That fog that makes simple tasks harder, the irritability that appears out of nowhere, the inflammation that makes your body feel older than your age, the cravings that feel impossible to ignore, the low mood that doesn't quite meet the threshold of depression but still weighs on your days, the fatigue that sleep just doesn't fix. None of these sensations are random. They're signals. They are the body's way of saying, my mitochondria are struggling. I need support. And this is where a powerful shift happens. When you see symptoms as information instead of identity, something inside you relaxes. You realize there's nothing wrong with who you are. There's something happening to how your cells are functioning. And that distinction matters. It removes shame. It dissolves self-blame. It opens a door, because if your symptoms aren't character flaws, and they're not mysterious, ungrounded disorders, but simply downstream reflections of energy production inside your cells, then there's a path forward, a practical, hopeful, biologically grounded path to feeling like yourself again. So as we conclude this video, let's bring the whole picture into focus. Your mitochondria are the tiny engines that keep you alive. They take the food you eat, move its electrons through intricate machinery, and turn that movement into ATP, the currency that pays for everything your body does. Quite literally the currency that pays for your entire life. When those mitochondria are thriving, your cells have what they need to make proteins, repair DNA, communicate clearly, transport nutrients, maintain balance, clean up waste, and run your metabolism. In other words, when you have good energy, you feel like yourself. But when mitochondria fall behind, when they can't make enough ATP to meet the demands of your life, your cells shift into a state of survival mode and quiet distress. They send alarm signals, the immune system responds, and in trying to help, it creates inflammation that touches every part of your experience. Your mood, your clarity, your digestion, your hormones, your joints, your skin, your energy, and your resilience. What can feel like a dozen unrelated issues is often one upstream reality. Your cells are running low on energy. This isn't about blame or failure. It's about understanding the body the way it actually works, as an interconnected system powered by a constant flow of clean energy. And once you understand that, a new question naturally rises. What's draining that energy? What, in the world we live in today, is quietly weakening your mitochondria day after day and year after year? Because mitochondria didn't evolve in the environment we live in now. They evolved in a world with whole foods, natural light, movement, clean air, predictable rhythms, and minimal artificial stress. Today, they face a completely different landscape. And that landscape is shaping the way we feel far more than most of us realize. In our next video, we're gonna break down the 10 major forces in modern life that ravage mitochondrial function, from chronic overnutrition to circadian disruption to environmental toxins to the hidden stressors we rarely even think about. Not to create fear, but to create clarity. Because once you understand what your mitochondria are up against, you can begin to give them what they need to thrive. So I'll see you in the next one.